What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
You don't know what that order is, Mr. Trash. I'd show you, but I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too fucking blind. If I were the man I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
We've said it once, we've said it twice, we've said it a million times. The truth shall always set you free. This is Tim, let's get off my lawn. The mad ramblings of a Gen Xer. We want to talk about the mayor race in New York. We want to talk about the governor race in New Jersey, because there's certain things we want to talk about with Jackie Sherrill. I'm the Zohran. I'm never going to call him by his right name. He's always going to be the Zohran to me. And yes, I know it's apropos that the Zohran from Don't Mess with the Zohran was a Jewish IDF agent, and we're using that to describe the Zohran in New York. We're going to usually they call it Super Tuesday. This is I'm going to call this Minor Tuesday, because this is an off election year, so there's really nothing else going on besides these races. But you have this socialist whose family is wealthy, extremely wealthy, who happens to be Muslim, of course, running for the mayor in New York against. We're not even going to get into the Republican opposition, because honestly, if he went against Cuomo without Curtis Leawood, this wouldn't even be a discussion. But since we're dividing the votes between the two Republicans and the idiocy of that, we're not even going to get into that. But New York, who had a very, I mean, if you look at New York in the 70s, you look at the movies from the early 70s and the 80s, that how they depicted New York, it was this tumultuous place. It was this unsafe place. And in reality, that's what it was. And we're kind of heading down that same path, because we are probably not but the New Yorkers are probably going to elect the first truly socialist mayor that has such radical plans and ideas for this city to make it a communism utopia. I mean, that's what this is. Let's just be honest. This guy wants to abolish land property ownership. That's his thought process. We're going to get into Thomas Sowell. We're going to get into a whole bunch of other things. But it's just, if you listen to this guy's rhetoric, or you listen to what he wants to do, the first thing I love about him, though, is is the fact that he wants all busing and public transportation to be free. His thought process was that if you make all this free, then that's also going to create safety for the bus drivers, because there's going to have to be no worry about fare jumpers. So we're going to make all buses and public transportation in the city of New York free to everyone. Free. And that's what I love, and because that's the liberal mantra when they want to win an election. Everything's going to be free, but in the end, the taxpayers pay for it. And we're going to get into that as well. So he's going to make all the buses and everything free. Transportation can be free in New York. That's going to be great. Possibly go wrong with that. Seriously. Oh, there's just one little catch. There's one little caveat. For him to do this, it's going to cost anywhere between $600 and $900 million a year that the city's going to have to shell out. Now, the city's already running at a budget deficit by like $1 billion. So he's going to tack on another $1 billion to implement this program. So you know the thought process with especially with liberals and socialists is, what we're going to do is we're going to attack the rich. Those damn richy riches. We're going to go after them. We're going to go after them like Bane went after the rich in Gotham. We're going to go after them. We're going to tax them more. We are going to sit there and slap another 2% tax onto the tax they're currently paying now. They're currently paying 50% of their income to the state, or I should say to the city of New York. We're going to slap on an additional 2% tax, because honestly, what would go wrong if you slapped on just 2% on these fucking millionaires? Let's listen to the Zohran.
A lot of individuals in this city pay more than 50% of their income in taxes. When you talk about a fair share, how much more than, what is the fair share? What's the number?
I've said that we should increase personal income taxes by
52% is fair.
And my point is this:
give up more than half of your income. That's
if you're making $1 million in New York City or more than that, you can afford to pay 2% more. And the reasons you can afford to do so is because that money will be used to better your.
It's gonna listen, you millionaires who take your cabs and your cars and your limos and your helicopters. You can now ride the bus for free. Oh, you fucking morons! But there's a caveat. No. There's a caveat to all this because with the Zohran, there always is. It's not going to be an added 2% on your already taxed money in reference to your personal income tax. No, for the city. It's not, we're not going to take that tax and just add on 2%. It makes it 52%. No. It's an additional 2% tax. I'm going to say this again. It's an additional 2% tax. So you're going to pay that 50% income tax that you're already paying. And now you're going to incur a 2% penalty. So it's not like you're just going to add on to the 2%, the 50% add on just 2%. No, because that would only be a couple $1,000s here and there. No. To increase that kitty of money for all the free stuff, because everyone knows a good socialist, socialism is great till you run out of other people's monies. No. That's almost like a 2% penalty. So you don't just pay additionally onto your into your state tax. That 2% is then taxed over everything individually. Think about that for a minute. So now they're going to be raising anywhere between, say you're $1 million, so you're going to get an additional $20,000. That's not chump change. So you are just going to try to tax yourself into prosperity by using other people's money. Then the Zohran's other big thing is rent control. We're going to have rent control. Everything, for you having private property, we're abolishing that. We're going to go after those bad landlords, and we're going after rent control. I want to play this full 2-minute clip because this clip really sums it up. And this is something that people in New York should listen to, because here's the thing. Rent control and major economists, historic economists, it says rent control does not work. Because of the fact that when you lock in the prices, the people that own these properties can only, charge so much. But the problem is when the cost of the upkeep for these buildings continues to go up, it's not going up alongside or parallel to the amount of money you can charge. So sooner or later, you're not going to have the ability for the upkeep of these properties because you don't have enough income coming in to make the repairs. It's very simple. There is so many apartments vacant right now in New York that are in rent-controlled buildings because the owners cannot put in tenants without actually losing money. But we got to listen to this full clip.
Standing here on West 83rd Street in front of a building owned by one of the worst landlords in New York City. We are talking about a lack of heat, a lack of hot water. Housing isn't just more expensive than ever. It's falling apart.
It's falling apart. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. It's falling apart because the landlords cannot afford the upkeep because you're not allowing them the ability to charge more.
Ron Mondani blames landlords for not maintaining their properties, but he doesn't realize that the rent control policies that he supports are responsible for the decline in the quality of housing in the first place. Rent control reduces the supply of housing because it is no longer profitable to build housing at the price dictated by the government. Thomas Sowell writes that not only is there little new housing built in rent-controlled cities, but the quality of existing housing deteriorates as landlords provide less maintenance and repair under rent control, since the housing shortage makes it unnecessary for them to maintain the appearance of their premises in order to attract tenants. Henry Hazlitt states that if rents are not allowed to increase in a free market, landlords will not trouble to remodel apartments or make other improvements in them. Not only will they have no economic incentive to do so, they may not even have the funds. Some rent control policies are so oppressive that landlords find it profitable to abandon buildings altogether. Sowell writes that in New York City, many buildings have been abandoned after their owners found it impossible to collect enough rent to cover the costs of services that they are required by law to provide, such such as heat and hot water.
And I will also build 200,000 truly affordable homes across the 5 boroughs over the next 10 years to ensure that tenants, whether rent stabilized or market rate, can actually have more housing.
Henry Hazlitt predicted that the inevitable result of rent control is the government deciding to build so-called affordable housing at the expense of the taxpayers. This doesn't make housing affordable, but simply passes the costs onto those who do not have the luxury of living in rent-controlled housing. Hazlitt writes that the houses are rented at a rate that does not pay back costs of construction and operation. The tenants in the buildings are being subsidized by the rest of the population. The question is, how long will those who are forced to foot the bill for someone else's rent choose to stay in the city and be looted by their public servants?
It's very simple. They don't. They fucking leave. You have corporations, you have financial institutions that are on Wall Street and have been on Wall Street for years going to Dallas. Why? Because they're getting out of this mayhem, this mess. They see it coming. And then I love it because the Zohran's like, well, if you do business in New York, even if you're not corporately headquartered here, we're going to tax you. Good luck with that one, motherfucker. Like I said, socialism is wonderful till you run out of other people's money to spend. And this utopia, or dystopia, we should call it, that we're running into is only going to get worse because of the fact that if you sit there and abolish property ownership, what else are you going to take away? Here he is saying it.
My platform is that every single person should have housing. And I think
now, like I said, this guy's father is a professor at Columbia University. His mother, I forget what his mother does, but you know, they're rich. The family's rich, and you know, when you can go out to a private island and basically have a walled off wedding with your millionaire friends, yes, that makes you the ultimate socialist.
With these two options, the system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if
I got an idea.
If there was any system,
I got an idea. Why don't you let him stay at your place?
That could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, you know, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that people try and play like gotcha games about these kinds of things, and it's like, look, I care more about whether some.
It's not a gotcha game. You literally just said you were going to abolish property ownership. When you lose Bill Maher.
Yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right. At its worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings, to which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades. Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem.
This is what New York is running into. I love New York. I love the city. I lived in the city for years. I don't go back as often because it's just gone downhill over the last 20 years. But I've loved New York City. And to see this happening, and you know it's going to happen now. And there's no, and to Bill Maher's point, there's no common sense to hit the brakes. New York is going off the cliff. And you have to sit there and wonder, and you have to hope that this experiment fails rapidly enough that it becomes a keystone moment for the 2028 presidential election. Because you know they're going to run some moron that's going to have this socialistic opportunities in their brain, and there's a segment of the population which is so disenfranchised about everything. It doesn't matter what it is. They're just disenchanted about everything. But these are the same people with their $400 handbags and their $2,000 phones preaching to other people, well, I feel oppressed. The only oppression is no one smacked you up the side of the head as a child and said, get fucking over it, be over yourself, not everything's a mental illness, and become a better person. Become an educated person. Stop worrying. And I love it. And the ethic of hard work is no longer there. Coming up with this Gen Zs and Gen XYQs, wherever the fuck it is. People like myself, I lived in a car at 18. I worked my way through college working 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job. I didn't want to take on the burden of student loans, so I worked. And I went to school at nights. I went to school during days. I went to school when it was conducive to work around my full-time schedules. I didn't ask for a handout. I didn't ask to be given something that I didn't deserve. But that's the way this society is now. Now, if you don't give a handout to people, you're racist. Now, if you own property, you're fascist. You're Hitler. And New York is literally about to run off the rails. And I'm worried that, and I'm not actually worried, because if someone like AOC or Bernie Sanders runs in 2028, I have this feeling that America will right the ship again and figure it out, especially after 4 years of Biden. I think about socialized medicine sometimes, and I think about Obamacare, and I think about the Obamacare premiums. When the bill passed, you can keep your doctor. You can do all this stuff. And it was interesting that if you take a look at the costs of Obamacare, and you look at the soaring costs, you go back to 2013, the average health insurance plan was $2,300. Not a month. It was $2,300. And then if you take a look at where we are, that's $2,300. That was in 2013. The first year of Obamacare, the premiums jumped up 68%. Remember, you can keep your own doctors. Don't forget, you can go all the specialists you want, pre-existing conditions and everything else. So a yearly premium was $2,500 in 13. In 14, it jumped up to over $4,300, 68% increase. It stayed pretty consistent through 15, through 16, it went up to $4,500. And then in 17, you're looking at $6,000. And then at 18, it jumped up to $8,000. And it stayed consistent to where it is now. It's almost $10,000, these subsidies. Think about that. Just think about that for a minute. It jumped from $2,500 to $10,000 a year for these people. So what they did is, I'm excuse not the subsidies, but I'm saying the premium increases. So what we did is the government then decided, of course, well, we're going to help people, of course, and this was all part of Obamacare. We're going to help them. We're going to offer these subsidies. So after that, after the last COVID bill, which never should have been passed, they added more subsidies into these premiums. So all these people, these 42 million people, or whatever the number is, that are on Obamacare are now being subsidized, the majority of their premiums, by the United States government. Where's that money coming from, of course? The money is literally coming from the United States taxpayer. So these premiums, of course, are supposed to expire at the end of 2025. Now, the problem is the Democrats don't like to point out is they're the ones that picked the expiration dates for these premiums. Previously, before the big, beautiful bill, Republicans actually voted to keep these premiums. Republicans voted to keep these premiums. Democrats said, no, they need to expire. They extended them once, but these premiums need to expire, especially the ones that were put into the last COVID bill. This was never supposed to be a permanent solution. But the problem is when you took away the open marketplace, you took away competition, you took away the ability for people to go out and get private insurance, because we had this small segment of the population that didn't want to be on Medicare and Medicaid, that we had to offer a marketplace for them to have these premiums and get this insurance, which is sometimes better than employer insurance, and you pay less. I always go to the example that in 2012, we had to get privatized insurance. And we, as a family of 3, paid, I think we paid like $198 a month in premiums. And this was the silver plan. This was the silver plan. I can't remember who. I think it was United Healthcare. It was a silver plan. So we paid $193 a month on this premium. And then after being on the premium for a little bit of time, it dropped down to like $125 a month. And this is with 3 people on the plan. We've talked about this before. I did the math. I went back now in 2025 and looked at what that same plan would cost me today. That same plan will cost me almost $2,800 a month. Now, of course, they're hoping that we get these subsidies, so the majority of it is paid by the taxpayers. But here's the thing. The Democrats are just funneling money into these privatized companies, these healthcare companies, because of the fact that they're part of their donors. They're part of what keeps them running. They're part of what keeps them in yachts. They're part of what all of a sudden they make $155,000 a year, but 4 years later, they're worth millions and millions of dollars. There is a reason why, because of these kickbacks. So basically, in my mind, all the Democrats are trying to do is subsidize this and give that money to the insurance companies to keep their constituents happy. And then the middle class has to sit there, open up wide, and take a bite into a big shit sandwich. We're going to get into more of that a little bit on, I'd probably say on Thursday. But again, as always, don't forget, the truth shall always set you free. This is Tim's going to find along the mad ramblings of a Gen Xer, and I'm out of here.